Moving on to Mr. Oduwole, from the Ogun State perspective, I mean, this zone is situated in Ogun State, which means the state has played a very key role in enabling its development up to this point. And the state has also been actively been promoting itself as an investment hub and inviting large investors and conglomerates like Arise. Can you share your experience so far in attracting these investors, and what challenges have you encountered in the process?
Thank you very much. It's key to say that I head an agency which is also a regulatory agency and is subnational, but we also promote and welcome investments. So where Ogun State is concerned, there are a number of key factors which have been quite germane in seeing that we've had quite influential, large, and far-reaching tentacles belonging to investors. So we're looking at both local, regional, national, and international investors. And a key thing is perhaps our proximity. So if you look at Ogun State, you'd see that the state is quite deliberate in the steps it takes to attract investors. One, we're called the gateway state, and it's not for nothing. You come into, if you come into the south of the country, you probably land in at Murtala Mohammed, and then you then go by land. If you're going by land, wherever you go in the country, you need to go by road. So whatever road you take to go to the west of the country, to go to the east of the country, and even if you're doing haulage and logistics, you go to the north of the country, you will pass through Ogun State. You will take the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You will take the Ijebu-Ode-Ekpe, Lekki Expressway. And then if you're going by rail, still doing your haulage as well, you would go through Ogun State, through a rail station in Abeokuta to get to Ibadan. So our proximity is quite key. And that's why when you say we're number one in logistics, because of our location. Also, still talking about proximity to the 5th largest market in Africa. That's a key thing. Lagos State. Now, Lagos State is still growing, but the rate of growth is not like in Ogun State. Or if you look by virtue of the IGR and also GDP of Ogun State, it's the largest growing economy, not just in the southwest, but in Nigeria. Now, if you look also at the location, Ogun State borders about 4 local states in the southwest and 1 international border with Republic de Benin. Now, when investors are looking at a preferred destination, they're looking at all these things. They're looking at profitability. They're looking at expansion. They're looking for ways to establish. They're looking for ways where they will have sustainable growth, which will not hit a peak in about 5 years. They're looking long term. We find that we've been able to offer all these things in Ogun State, and that helps. So proximity, transport networks. Also, because we're subnational, political leadership is quite important. So we are in Ogun State in the 2nd term of the governor who was appointed in May of 2019. So if you look at the administration of Governor Odapo Abiodun, MFR, it's been quite deliberate in having long-term development plans. When you're looking at public-private partnership, you're looking at a partnership that would exceed 5, 10, 15, sometimes go into 20, 25 years. You're looking long-term. Investors want to be able to repatriate the gain and profit to whatever the finances and the resourcing came from. And this is quite important. So choosing the right investor, for instance, in Ogun State, one of our biggest investors is Arise. And there's a reason for that. We find that when Ogun State is looking longer term for sustainable investments, we need to find an investor who, A, understands our objectives, B, understands our trajectory, what we're hoping to achieve for the economy, for the people who choose to live and work and have their recreation and business relationships in Ogun State. That's quite important. I would say what else has helped us, I mentioned being deliberate. I think Mrs. Odulaja mentioned in her presentation, and it is true that Ogun State has the highest number of tertiary institutions in Nigeria, both private and public universities. And there's a business sense here. A lot of these graduates actually remain in and around Ogun State because when you look at connectivity, information, communication, and technology, it's so vast and it's so advanced now that these graduates can either work for local businesses with an international flavor, or they can remain in Ogun State and serve international interest, where they can work for the likes of Microsoft and big telecoms and Google and be in Ogun State. They can be HR business partners and remain in Ogun State. So all these things have been key in attracting high-level, sustainable, and financially viable investors to come into Ogun State. again, without beating the boat too much, I mentioned being deliberate. When you look at the Ogun State's development plan, it includes having special economic zones. It includes having free trade zones. It includes having economic development clusters. Ogun State is divided into 3 senatorial zones and 20 local governments. And it's quite keen to ensure that development is spread around the state so that no part of the state is the poor neighbor of the other part of the states. So when you look at all these things together, it comes across as having a focused, sustainable development plan for the states. And this is how we've been able to attract investors who come and stay and grow. And one thing I will say is that when our investors come in, some are new, they're international, they come from outside of Nigeria, like Arise IIP. You also have local investors who are regional or national who want to grow. So they find that they have not been able to expand where they are, so they come to Ogun State, where we have a very effective land administration system. So we also have a very effective onboarding system, where we have agencies within the government who assist incoming businesses. So we have the Public-Private Partnership Agency, which I head. We also have an investment promotion facility called Ogun Invest, who are very focused in having and being able to provide data and information and onboarding and assisting businesses and manufacturers who want to come in and invest in Ogun State. And very briefly, just so I don't hog the microphone, I think you mentioned challenges. The challenges that we found, and I will talk about how we encountered and how we addressed these challenges. A primary one was, still is, infrastructure deficits. So we found that Ogun State has one of the highest network of federal roads in Nigeria. So how many of you have ever heard of the Lagos-Sokoto Highway? It actually passes through Ogun State, and sometimes some will say it starts in Ogun State. And then, of course, there's the Lagos-Ibadan, there's the Shagamu-Benin, Ore. These are all federal roads, which are not always in the best state. So we found that we had to network effectively with the federal government to ensure that, A, they would either come and rebuild this road, or they would give us permission, which is very difficult to get, to actually develop these roads. Another thing we found as a challenge was power. And we found that, again, we had to be deliberate. So Ogun State is fortunate, again, to have gas lines, gas pipes, running from the east of the country where the gas deposits are, and they run through Ogun State. So what we've been able to do and encourage our investors to do is to tap into this gas line to provide power, to feed the locations, to feed the economic development clusters, and ensure that they have that built-up infrastructure. And lastly, I'll just mention another problem we had. I've mentioned the 2 agencies. We've had to have a cohesive approach. So basically, we have a strong enabling environment in Ogun State in terms of the agencies and how they work, in terms of the fiscal policies, in terms of the incentives that we offer to incoming investors. And this is the sort of thing that those who decide to come into our zones, those who decide to come into our special agro-processing zone, those who decide that they want to have their logistics heads based or networks or head offices based in Ogun State, these are the kind of facilities and cooperation that they enjoy in Ogun State. Thank you very much.